Well, there are major security concerns tonight in Israel after a gruesome attack on a synagogue in Jerusalem yesterday, as new questions come over the president's choice of words right here in the hours after. 5 people are dead, including 3 Americans, after 2 Palestinian cousins in their 20s entered a Jerusalem synagogue during morning prayers, using at least 1 gun, a meat cleaver, and knives, with the intent of butchering more than 24 people inside. We are learning tonight one of the victims who survived the attack is now in a coma. And while Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas condemned the attacks, many Palestinians celebrated them. News cameras catching scenes of celebrations with some folks doing victory dances and waving flags, while others were seen, look at this, handing out candy and cookies and waving hatchets and guns in the air to mimic the attackers. President Obama reacted yesterday by saying both sides now have to work together.
We condemn in the strongest terms these attacks. Secretary Kerry has spoken to Prime Minister Netanyahu. President Abbas has strongly condemned the attacks. Too many Israelis have died, too many Palestinians have died. And at this difficult time, I think it's important for both Palestinians and Israelis to try to work together to lower tensions and to reject violence.
They both have to work together to lower tensions. Our next guest suggests that, contrary to the president's remarks, there's only one guilty party here. Bret Stephens is deputy editor of the Wall Street Journal's editorial page. He's a former editor-in-chief of the Jerusalem Post, and he's author of America in Retreat: The New Isolationism and the Coming Global Disorder. Bret, good to see you.
It's good to be here.
And so the president says both sides need to work together. What's wrong with that?
Oh, it's moral equivalency at its very worst. It's putting the victim and the killers on a similar par as if they have equal responsibilities. That's just not the case. What the president should have said is Israelis should not have to negotiate with a Palestinian Authority, Palestinian leaders, and Palestinian people who are cheering the murder of rabbis praying peacefully in a synagogue. That's what he should have said. And, you know, this is a president who has a problem coming and just speaking up in moral terms in defense of our allies and basically in defense of the victims of an incredible crime. So this is really problematic. If you're an Israeli hearing this and you're saying to yourself, hang on, 5 people were just murdered, maybe 6, and all he can do is call for peace from call on both sides to show restraint, that's like losing sight of some basic moral realities here. One more thing. President Abbas did not strongly condemn the killings. He had to be pushed to condemn it, and even then he did it in the most equivocal terms. So the president's statement doesn't even reach the level of factual accuracy, much less moral decency.
And then President Abbas's, the party website, Fatah's website, was calling it a great blessing.
Right.
The terrorist attack. So, I mean, yes, the words were spoken that he condemned it, but that is meaningless without the context of what else he said and has been saying. So why does our president do that?
Right. And the context of a culture of Palestinian incitement to murder and violence that is pervasive in Gaza, in the West Bank, among the so-called moderates of Fatah, along with the more extreme elements like Hamas. And that's really what's at stake here. People talk about the settlements, the borders, the territories. Really, it's an issue of political culture within the Palestinians that is addicted to this kind of grotesque violence and an international community that shrugs its shoulder.
Now, President Obama would like to play a role in brokering some sort of a peace. And so how can he do that if he just comes out and keeps condemning one side, even if in his mind and according to the facts, the one side is more often to blame than the other? You know, they point to other incidents where the Palestinian teenager was murdered after the 3 Israeli students were kidnapped and murdered. You know, it's tit for tat over there. And so that's why the president says, well, there's been violence on both sides.
No, but it's not tit for tat.
It's not really.
It's not. I mean, you can count on one hand incidents where Israelis were guilty of crimes like this. In fact, one is famous, 1994, Baruch Goldstein. I know his name. Almost every Israeli would know his name because it's one of the most revolting acts in the state of Israel. A Jewish terrorist went and murdered Muslim worshippers. But this is routine among the Palestinians, and there's a big difference between an Israeli society which condemns a Baruch Goldstein and Palestinians who celebrate it. What I would say to the president, it's not a matter, it's not tit for tat, it's not equivalent. Israel is our ally, it shares our values, and the best thing that Obama could do is stop subjecting the Palestinians to the to coin a phrase, soft bigotry of low expectations, and simply suggesting that somehow they ought not to have higher moral standards for themselves. You know, we are friends today with the Germans, with the Japanese, but those societies went through a period of moral revitalization after World War II, and the Palestinians could stand to go through something similar.
Why did you write this book?
Look, I wrote this book very simply because I think that the next crop, especially of Republican candidates for president, need a primer on what a strong, sensible, and sellable conservative foreign policy ought to be. Why the United States needs to be the world's policeman, but not its preacher. Why we need to be a country that enforces rules, enforces a decent world order, but doesn't try to heal crippled societies.
Brett, good to see you.
Good to be here.
Up next, with the grand jury ready to return, a decision any moment now on the shooting death of Michael Brown, Dr. Ben Carson has a warning for those ramping up the rhetoric on the ground. He is live right after this break. Plus, Janice Dickinson is the latest woman to come forward and accuse Hollywood actor and comedian Bill Cosby of sexual assault. So why is the former DA who handled one of the cases standing by his decision not to prosecute?